Welcome to the NBA Hangout presented by Playbook Sports. I'm your host, Brandon. With me, as always, is Dave. Dave, how are you?
Things good, man. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. We're here with another week. And last week, we previewed the Eastern Conference. And this week, we'll talk about the Western Conference. Some preseason games have happened, but obviously not too many takeaways we can have from that. Teams are still playing starters sparsely, and there's all that excitement going on with that. But we have a lot to talk about with the top of the West, the middle of the West, the bottom of the West. I think there's a lot to dive into. How have you been?
Yeah, good. You mentioned like teams barely playing starters, but like we already have injuries. like most teams have played like one game, maybe two, and we already have injuries. So like I don't blame coaches for not playing their starters, right? These guys are like programmed to play, hard, play 100%. And if you haven't played in months, like
You need that ramp up.
you need the ramp up, and it's easy to get hurt. Like I was worried, like Jaw rolled his ankle.
Oh
And I was
man.
like,
Yeah.
don't do this to us. Like you just had one of the most unbelievable chase down blocks. Like
Threw a lob to Edie.
yeah, threw a lob to Edie. It was great, and it's like yeah, like Memphis is back. This is gonna be fun. And then he rolls his ankle, and you're like, who let this man play?
yeah. It's like, but then he needs to play so he doesn't roll his ankle. It's always this this tricky balance with the ramp up period. But we are going through it. I think to start it off though, we can look at the top of the West, the playoff teams, the contenders, if you will. So again, just like last week, we have ESPN's predictions for the Western Conference, and for the playoffs, they have OKC, Minnesota, Dallas Mavericks, Denver, Phoenix, and Sacramento fighting for those 1 through 6 spots. OKC being at the top there. I guess first takes of just seeing that laid out like that. How do you feel about the teams in that order? Do you think some teams should be higher, some teams should be lower, or general thoughts on that?
I think it's close. I think Dallas is too high, and I think Sacramento's probably too high. Like, let's not forget, like Dallas, they played their way into the NBA Finals, but like they didn't have a great season. They're not like I still think like Denver's a better team than Dallas, right? And Phoenix is still like a really good regular season team. So I think Dallas is a bit high. Sacramento, I don't know if DeRozan's enough to put them up to 6th, right? I know that like the Pelicans have no center. Golden State's old. I think the Grizz are too low. I think the Rockets could surprise, and I think the Lakers are too low, and I think San Antonio's too low.
Yeah, I could see some of those. I definitely agree with for sure. We'll get to Memphis later because I think they're definitely way too low here at 9. Like what that team has done before when Ja has been healthy has been one of the top teams in the West. So them at that position seems a little low for me too. But at the top of the West there with OKC, Minnesota, I guess you talked about Dallas a little bit. Two youngish teams, two emerging teams. You have Shea kind of leading the guys for OKC. Minnesota made the trade to get rid of Cat, which cleared the way for Anthony Edwards to be the main guy on the Timberwolves. I mean, he really was already, but this really just certified his role offensively on that team. So looking at those two teams in particular, and I guess you can throw in Denver there as well. Who do you think might have like the better season? Because I'm seeing a lot of people have OKC as a clear number 1 team for this season. But I think Minnesota has some credence to be in that same conversation, and like you said, Denver as well.
So I think OKC, considering how well they got on last year, like they should be relatively the same. Even with a minor step back, they should kind of be ahead of everybody. With Minnesota, like a lot of people are talking like they're talking about like the Randall acquisition, and they're saying like, oh, you should never make an acquisition based upon your salary cap next year, right? and like a lot is being made of his like expiring contract. But I think like the way Randall balances that team makes a little bit more sense than like with Cat on the team. And like Cat's a really good player. Like don't get me wrong. Like he's already shown in New York like what he can do in his like one preseason game. Like New York fans are gonna love him for a year or two before they grow to hate him. Um
As it is with all stars there.
yeah. Sorry, Cat. But I think there's gonna be nice balance in Minnesota, especially with Dante there. It's really just Minnesota comes down to the point guard. Is it gonna be Mike Conley all year? Is Rob Dillingham ready to have a big role in the NBA? Is Anthony Edwards able to bring the ball up and
Initiate
facilitate
offense.
plays? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think for Minnesota, the more I got to process the trade, I started to like it more and more. For Minnesota, just shoring up that guard rotation, 'cause I think it was a little thin last year. They just had this kind of like Conley just out there. And when he was gone, it was a little difficult. You have Nikhil, but he's not a true point guard. He's more on the wing there. So I think bringing in Dante, I think bringing in Dillingham and making that trade to ensure that they're able to draft him has been good because they get some scoring off of those out of that guard position that they didn't really have in the past. And I think Conley still being there as like your steady vet works out well for this team and for like the youth of this team to help them grow. Because I think one thing that's going to be tough for them is you were great last year in the regular seasons, and this goes for OKC as well. And to repeat that success, I think is something that's tricky for a young team. But I think having a guy like Conley there kind of helps that. He had to do that when he was one of the lead guys on Memphis, so he knows what it is to repeat success again and again and again. So I'm getting a little bit higher on Minnesota the more I look at that trade. I think their depth is going to be really good. They're going to be able to throw out a lot of bodies at a lot of teams, and they're going to be a matchup nightmare for a lot if they can get to it. And if Chris Finch keeps developing his repertoire as he has in the past few years, I think that should be just lead to more and more success for them. And then with OKC, I think watching a little bit of their preseason game the other day, seeing Chet just being more willing to drive and more of like a off the ball kind of guy. And doing it with like no hesitation. Like it was only a few plays, but just seeing that willingness from him to do that, to switch it up a little bit. Like they're running dribble handoff with him coming off the screen and Hartenstein being the screener, and just having that option to do that with Chet and being so fluid in doing that really kind of puts the ceiling on OKC even higher. And the comfort level that Jalen Williams was playing with in the little minutes that he did get to was refreshing to see. And you mix that in with Caruso, which the trade when it happened, I wasn't super high on, but again, these things process. I have a whole summer to kind of process what's going on with the team, and it fits really nicely. He's now a vet in the league who kind of been through a lot and knows how to be steady, kind of like how I mentioned with Conley. For Minnesota, I could kind of see Caruso playing a similar role for OKC, except he doesn't have the ball handle like that because he has guys who can do that. Jalen seems to be growing into that playmaking role. Shea is one of the elite playmakers, if not one of the MVP candidates this year again, entering the season. So I think repeat success for them this year, if I had to guess, would be really high for OKC, and I'm high on what they're able to do this year. And same goes for Minnesota. I think those are your top two teams. I do think, as you mentioned earlier, we are sleeping on Denver a bit. I think we do this every preseason. We kind of just count them out, and then we forget how good Jokic is. And then at the end of the season, you're like, oh wow, they're challenging for a top spot in the NBA, and they just rack up a bunch of wins because they have Jokic and they have Jamal Murray when healthy, and they're able to do something. So they have lost some depth. I think that's where some of the skepticism is coming from around the league, is that their depth isn't where it used to be. But your top end talent is still there with Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and Nikola Jokic. You're still going to be a good team.
Oh yeah, and like don't forget they still have like Aaron Gordon. Did they retain KCP?
No, he's on the Magic now, which I think was a good
Ooh.
pickup for the Magic.
Yeah.
vets seems to be the theme so far, and that's a great pickup for the Magic on that regard too, to getting a vet in there who can play both ways and can give them a little shooting. But yeah, losing KCP I think is a big one for them. Like I think they needed to retain him. They lost Bruce Brown too, and he kind of did some of their things, just those utility guys. But they're banking on some of their younger guys stepping up. So
hey, they could trade for Brown back. I hear he's on the block.
he just might be.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like I think that there's a lot more in Denver than, and this is the thing. They're like, oh, 2 years removed from the championship, they keep losing guys, but it's this theory that like nobody's gonna step up and make good on new opportunities. Like they still have like Christian Braun and stuff like that, like guys like
And
that.
They did add Russell Westbrook in the offseason. He is on their team.
Russell Westbrook is like a one-man bench, right?
Yeah.
Like you put him out in the second unit and he's gonna put up numbers for you. You're not likely to close games with Russ anymore. You've got Jokic for that. You've got Jamal Murray for that. So like, yeah, I think Russ was actually like a sneaky good pickup. I think he's the way that his game has changed in the second half of his career. Not so much that his game has changed, but like he's really comfortable with his like role. Like he doesn't need to be a starter. He doesn't need to have the ball all the time. Like he just wants to play basketball and
and win
contribute
some games in it. Yeah. He wants to be because I think that Lakers experience really opened his eyes to like, okay, I think that was a big wake up call for him. And then even more so, furthermore, when he went to the Clippers, and then Harden came over, I think it was just all a big, huge wake up call for him, because it's his hometown and everything like that. And you want to still be in the limelight there. But yeah, I think him in Denver now is a great move for him. He won't be under so much pressure. He can kind of play the way he wants to play coming off the bench, because looking at this depth chart, it is really thin. This team is thin. They have any injury and it'll be a tricky season for them. But when they are healthy, I think this team is one of the better constructed teams still, and can cause serious problems for any team, really.
Well, and like this year with a lot of noise being made about this upcoming draft, like if you're willing to buy this year, teams are going to be willing to sell. Like there's going to be a lot of like good role players available all year long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And a couple stars.
Yeah. And they're going to be high on that list of trying to acquire talent, because they just have to be, and they need to be competitive. And like you said, there's going to be options available come trade deadline, and maybe even sooner, for them to explore. Lots of teams are trying to get into that Cooper Flag discussion. So so that's for sure. So another team. So when we go down a little further down into this, into the rankings, the predictions here, that Phoenix, we can go into like that Phoenix, Sacramento, New Orleans, and I'll throw Memphis and Golden State in there. That kind of like next tier of teams. I think going into the season, I think finishing the off season, it was a very, very tough ending for Phoenix last year. I don't think the season didn't end, of course, how they expected it to end. It was a lot of bumps throughout the season. Trying to get all those three guys healthy and playing together. They had some moments where it looked really good, but then they had some moments where the depth really, really showed itself. I think an underrated thing with Phoenix this year is they got Tyus Jones, who's a steady point guard, steady guy. He does his job. Doesn't do too much. Low turnover guy. Like he's very steady as a point guard. That's just what they need for Devin Booker. You don't need anything too crazy. Booker's been doing a lot of playmaking. He can do it, as we've seen. He's been able to, in FIBA, play any type of role that you ask him to play. But I think just getting another ball handler is going to be really good for Booker, and even better for Beal, because I don't think that's natural for him either. But I think getting the real pickup for me is Budenholzer is now their coach, and I think even though we all make fun of like how he doesn't adjust in games as quickly as we would like to, he has a system, and that system's going to win you season games. You know what it is every game. You know what style you need to play. He's done great with bigs. He worked well with Brook Lopez. He could do something similar with Yusuf Nurkic. No reason why he can't. So I think Mike Budenholzer is probably one of the bigger additions to this Phoenix team that is maybe a little underlooked going into this season. It gives me, crazy to say, a little bit more faith in what they're able to do, at least for the season. Now, come playoff time, it might be a different story, but you do have Kevin Durant, and that's where you hope that wins out. Kevin Durant is aging, but you still have Kevin Durant.
Well, that was going to be my point. Like Budenholzer couldn't find a better team to go to, in my opinion, because like Durant's basketball IQ is so high. If he recognizes that something else needs to be done, like it's going to get done. And the same with like Booker. Like Booker just keeps trending upwards, and like I have my respect, and this is just me as a fan, but like my respect for Booker keeps going up, even though my interest in him remains steady. I'm just like, he's just not like if I'm playing 2K, for example, and it's like, oh, I could draft Devin Booker. I'm like, who else is available? Right? Even though he's probably the best player. Yeah. And he is such a good player, and he's the same. Like he's got that high basketball IQ too, that like even if Budenholzer isn't like changing the plays for you or like running something specific, between Booker and Durant, like you're always, it's like having two coaches on the court. Like these guys just, they know how to make the adjustment in real time. They don't need the coach to be like telling them. And you're right, he's got a great system and they're going to win games. And like they feel a little deeper, and Jones pickup I think was great because you wanted a point guard who's gonna like run the offense but doesn't need the ball. If that makes sense.
Doesn't need to do too much with it, and when he does have it, it's going to be purposeful. It's not going to be wasted. I think it's really good. And they also like furthermore on their bench, like speaking on like how their bench does look improved. It's they have Monte Morris there, another point guard who's similar, not going to make too many mistakes. Just going to do the right play. Royce O'Neal coming over from Brooklyn. Like I think that's also another good pickup. Just a solid vet. I think that's an improvement over having like relying on Josh Okogie. So yeah, I think there's some stuff there. I wish their bigs were a little better. You know, Mason Plumlee and Nurkic being your two true bigs is a little tough. But I think elsewhere they did improve, and I think this should be a better, clearer season for the Phoenix Suns. And I could even see them jumping some of these teams as well too. Like I could see them, like you mentioned, Dallas. I think Dallas is going to have a tricky season, and like you said, they surged late to have to get good playoff position, and then to be able to do something in the playoffs. So wouldn't be shocked if they fall down a couple pegs here, and this feels more like playoff excitement, playoff hype running over into the season. I think also here too is like, okay, so we look at Phoenix, Sacramento. Let's talk about Memphis. I think instead of this 6th spot being Sacramento, I just don't know how you can't think this should be Memphis's. I know last year they had a pretty underwhelming season, but like Bane was hurt, Ja was hurt. I'm pretty sure Jaren Jackson was out for a little bit. Yeah, Ja was out the entire year. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. was out for a little bit. He always seems to be out for a little bit. So I think it's just we're just forgetting what Memphis can be when they're fully healthy. And I think having that year for Bane, especially, he got to work on some stuff. I remember tracking some of his games earlier on last season, and the playmaking looked much better. Something that he would not have gotten the chance to do if Ja was still playing. So I think some of those players gained those skills, and translating into this season and bringing Ja into the fold could be really beneficial to Memphis. And I would not be shocked if they're knocking on the door of one of those top maybe 3 to 6 spots in the West going into this year. They have Marcus Smart too. He was hurt last year. I think a lot of those guys who got to play heavy minutes, some of those young guys like your Scottie Pippen Juniors, your Vince's as well. Like I think those guys are going to be more ready this year to play, and I think last year would have been great for their development as well.
Well, and Memphis, like I know they have a rookie center in Zach Edey, but I also kind of think Zach Edey's going to win like Rookie of the Year. I think he's going to work really well with the rest of the pieces on that team, and like I as long, like you say, as long as they stay healthy, like this is a team to watch out for. This is a team that like is already built to compete.
Yeah, like your projected starting lineup for this team is Ja Morant, Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Zach Edey. Like that is a starting lineup. Watching a bit of Zach Edey in his preseason game too. Still, like the game looks a little fast for him at times. Like that's gonna take some time. Like we were talking before we started. Big sometimes take a little time on the defensive end or in general just to catch up to the game speed of the NBA. Like things look like they're happening a bit too fast for him, but I'm sure that'll clean up. But he seemed to know his positions well. He had a nice little lob with Ja Morant. He had a couple other dump offs, but yeah, like him there, the depth with Scottie Pippen Jr. You have Gigi Jackson, one of the youngest guys in the NBA that they like to remind us every time he steps on the court. Vince Williams, like I think all those guys who got to play at the end of last year and they showed sparks are going to be great for the moments that they have to be used this year.
Yeah, and like it's one of those things. Like when it comes to Edey, when we get back to him, like yeah, the game's probably always going to be a little fast for him, but he's never going to get out muscled either. Like he might be the biggest man in the NBA right now. At what is he, 7'3"?
He's at humongous.
Yeah, pushing 300 pounds. Like
yeah, 7'4", 300.
Yeah, nobody's going to push this guy around, right? So once he learns to use his body in an effective way, stand where he needs to stand, like pick and rolls with Ja are going to be crazy. Just like everybody's talking about the pick and roll between like Jalen Brunson and Cat, and it's like, yeah, those are two high skilled guys. Like that pick and roll is going to be great, but like there's going to be like a power pick and roll between Ja and Edey, because Edey's going to be able to just force his way to the net, and Ja's like is Ja like one of the fastest guys in the NBA, one of the most athletic guys in the NBA.
Yep.
Right, like it's going to be different, but it's going to be exciting, and then it's just surrounded by shooting, right? Like Bane is a knockdown. Well, Marcus Smart, he's a little erratic. Good. He's erratic, yeah.
But he can shoot it, and they have to respect his shot. Yeah. And where you lack there, Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to shoot.
Jaren Jackson's going to shoot, and he's going to play defense, and he's going to roam, right? Like, I think it works. I'm high on Memphis. Top 3, I don't know if they're top. I wouldn't be surprised if they're top 3, but I wouldn't bet on that right now.
I think the 3 through like 7 in the West is going to be pretty a dogfight. Like we haven't really talked much about New Orleans either, but they're going to be in that hunt too if they can get Ingram healthy and have Zion healthy at the same time. That seems to be the trick for them.
Trey Murphy's center this year.
We talk about injuries already happening. Trey Murphy's injured on them too, and it's like you kind of need his shooting too. So I mean, Jordan Hawkins looked good, so that's positive for them. But between the Pelicans and the Kings, is there a team there that you feel better about? I feel like they're kind of in that same tier, kind of weary on both. Like the Kings made the accusation of getting DeMar DeRozan there. Adding him to the starting lineup. And you have him playing next to Fox and Sabonis and Keegan Murray. And I just don't know how I really feel about that at the end of the day. Like offensively, it feels like they'll score a lot of points, but it doesn't feel like it's going to be the ideal way that all those guys can play together because of how they occupy, but they will score. And defensively, I'm pretty out on it. So I need to see more evidence that that's going to work for me to be comfortable with them there.
Yeah, so to me, both of those teams have like flaws, right? San Antonio doesn't play defense, or San Antonio, my apologies. Sacramento doesn't play defense, and New Orleans doesn't have a center. I feel more comfortable in New Orleans fixing their center issue than Sacramento fixing their defense issue. So I think I'm higher on New Orleans than Sacramento, even though I've always kind of liked the Kings. They wear purple. They're the ultimate underdog team. Like,
God, I love purple.
All right. Yeah. Come on. Purple teams for the win. It's going to be Suns, Raptors, Kings, and a little Lakers in there. Right. People are going to be like, how'd this happen? Power of purple. Yeah. Yeah. I feel better about New Orleans than I do Sacramento. But I think they're probably in the right spot, roughly. Maybe I would put both in the play-in category.
Yeah, I think that's accurate for them there. I think they're both going to end up in the play-in. I just think these other teams, Memphis is just they have too much talent there, and that makes sense. Like talent that fits pretty seamlessly. I think all these teams kind of have that. I feel those two teams, like you mentioned, kind of lack that, especially when like Trey Murphy and Ingram aren't there and healthy. It makes it really difficult for New Orleans. By all accounts, Ingram should be fine, but Trey Murphy is more of an issue. But still, we just know with how their seasons have gone in the past that they're going to be banged up at some point. Do you see any of these teams in the lottery, though, projected lottery, sneaking into that play-in situation?
I mean, it's really hard to bet against LeBron, especially when his running mate is Anthony Davis. The Lakers, yeah, they know.
40 minutes in and no Lakers talk, and we're talking about the West. Isn't that crazy?
The Lakers, like, they don't feel deep. I'll give them that. And like, they don't feel very like balanced, but just between those two guys, like I feel like they're definitely a play-in team. And then San Antonio, like there's so much. Wemby's a year older. He's got his FIBA experience. Like he nearly beat Team USA for a gold medal, which is crazy. And then you finally given him a real point guard. You gave him Chris Paul. Yes, Chris Paul is old, but like he's going to be able to do what Victor Wembanyama needs him to do. And then it just puts everybody else in better positions, right? Moreover, I feel like San Antonio, depending on how they're doing, like if they're pushing their way out of the lottery, I think that's a team primed to make a trade, right? Like they could be a team that goes hard after Brandon Ingram if he stays available. They could be a team that I don't think they would go for like an older star. I think they did that with
Chris Paul, and they also got Harrison Barnes too, which I think leads to like them just getting some vets there and there to play more winning basketball next to Wemby.
I think they would be after somebody who could be with Wemby for a while. So like an Ingram makes sense. I think that as teams sag for flag, that young good players may become available. Like if Detroit's middling, not able to break out of the lottery talk, but getting too far away from the basement, are they putting some of their young players up? Right? They've got a couple of good young players who, like, are they getting forgotten about?
I really was going to
happen. Jaden Ivey, like every year.
I was going to say, like, I really was going to happen with Jaden Ivey, if he's long for Detroit, because I think he would fit well on a couple teams. Notably the Miami Heat.
Trailblazers,
Please,
you
Heat
know.
trade for Jaden Ivey.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I
Is
think that's going to be
Alfreni
interesting to track.
Simmons available? Yeah.
Yeah, like there's things there. There's players there. Like and also with San Antonio, I do like them having, like, I think another year under Vassell's belt. Again, we're talking about health a lot. Seems to be a theme of this episode. Vets and health. I think Devin Vassell, if he can stay healthy for the season too, would be a real nice piece next to Wembanyama for a long run too. If he can just get his body right. I think Chris Paul being around those guys, we saw what it did for Shea in OKC. I think something similar can happen with Stephen Castle. I think he's a perfect pair to have with a young guy like that, and just to be around this young team to help them grow. Him with Pop, I think that's one of the better fits in the NBA coming off of that off season. Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I could see San Antonio leaping into that play-in territory. Houston's gonna have a struggle. Like they're really gunning for it near the end of the season last year, try and get into the play-in and try and get into the playoff spot, but they fell just a little bit short. So I'm sure they're gonna be gunning for it again. But I think they're gonna be in a tricky situation, and I think they're also a team that we're gonna have to look out for to making one of those consolidation trades, because they just have so many young guys and they can't play them all, and they definitely can't pay them all when they're all due for it. So they gotta be making some tough decisions soon, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a couple teams like that. Heck, I mean, look at the offseason. OKC already started that, right? They're a team with an embarrassment of riches when it comes to young, talented players, and they moved Josh Giddey for Caruso, mostly to bring like more like long-term stability to the team, more role definition, fill in some of the areas that they're lacking, right? And to say that they're lacking like defense is funny when they have like Lou Dort and Kason Wallace, and Chet, right? And it's not like Shea's a bad defender. It's not like Jalen Williams is a bad defender. But yeah, I think it's going to begin, and I think you're going to see teams like I think OKC is going to have to do it again. They're going to have to make another consolidation trade at some point, maybe this year, maybe this offseason. Like they have the Clippers pick. That's going to be a really good pick. Like they're going to get more talent. Houston is definitely one with a lot of young players. Detroit's one with a lot of good young players. Same with Portland. Like eventually, you know, you have to pull like a Sacramento, and you have to trade to fill in, right? Like Sacramento traded Halliburton for Sabonis, and honestly, it's worked out. It's worked out. Like people will be like, well, Halliburton, like he's turned into like one of the best young point guards in the game. Yes, it's true. But have you looked at DeMontis's impact in Sacramento and the numbers that he puts up? Right? Like there's going to be some trades this year that people didn't see coming, and they're going to be the most interesting trades of the year, and they're probably going to be consolidations, like you say.
Yeah. I think that's just about right. I think the Cat trade was just like an illustration of that. There's going to be some trades they're going to look a little weird at first, but they're going to mean something for both those two teams, and they're going to have reasons behind it, and also cap ramifications. It seems they're still figuring all that stuff out. So I think that's where we're at with all of that. It's going to be interesting, I think, to track throughout the year to see what teams are going to be selling, what teams are going to be buying. Lots of opportunities for a lot of these teams here. I think before we head out, any other of these teams that we didn't really talk about, they want to give a few words on? I think we got most of it.
I think Utah is probably being slept on a little bit. I think they're probably better than the second worst team in the West. That could be.
It could be. Yeah. Clippers could be really bad, man.
Yeah, Clippers could be really bad. That's kind of like I love Kawhi. He won the Raptors a championship, but he just keeps like his legs, man, like his legs. And he's a smart player. He's a great shooter. He's a good defender. But how much are you going to get out of him this year? And he's never going to be, hell, he's never going to be 2019 Kawhi again, even, right? And like he won the Raptors the championship on one leg.
Yeah, he was still hurt that year.
Yeah, he was still hurt, right? Like,
hurt, yeah.
So unfortunately, like Kawhi, like he's getting paid. He'll probably see out his contracts. Like I can never see him like retiring early. Although he's Kawhi, he could do anything.
Never know that guy.
Never know. However, like, yeah, the Clippers don't have a lot right now, and I don't even know if they've got enough to make consolidation trades or
they might just
trades.
Yeah, they're in a real rough situation, especially with how that Paul George stuff transpired. So it's gonna be tough for the Clippers. Warriors as well, one of the teams that we're used to talking about a lot. Just meddling there. Like even when they have them there at 8th, I'm like, should that be higher? Should that be lower? Like I'm not too sure how I feel about Golden State. They did lose Clay. Clay is now a Dallas Maverick. But they added Buddy Hield. So I don't know how that's really gonna translate. Kind of need to see that one play out a little more to get a real feel on Golden State.
So I asked you this before the pod about Miami. Is Miami going to trade for a star or trade a star? It's the same with Golden State. And they've got everything to do it. They've got picks and young players. They could trade for a star, but they've also got stars where it's like, could you imagine Golden State trading Steph Curry?
Oh, I could not. Right. But I could see a situation where if this year doesn't look good at all, I could see a situation where in a year or two that maybe Steph has wandering eyes. Like he's only human. He's done so much for their franchise, and if he wants to try and win one more somewhere else, I could see him totally trying to do that. Maybe 10 years ago, I would not have felt that way with any player, but just the way that now. Seeing so many different things happening in the NBA over the course of however long I've been watching the NBA, it's like nothing like that would surprise me anymore. So I think they're in that position too, where they're kind of in flux. They could trade for a star. They could trade some stuff to kind of solidify more of their youth movement. They've spoken like they wanted to solidify their core guys in Steph and Draymond. Like those are their guys. They're going to ride with those guys. It sounds like they want to do that, but start losing games, they're gonna have to take a real hard look, especially at Draymond and what he's providing, and if it's worth all of that. So, should be interesting to track the Warriors this year. Really strange for them. Anything else?
Let's get some real basketball playing. Like it's nice to have preseason, and it's nice to see the guys in uniform, and it's nice to see like some of the rooks out there, but I hate meaningless basketball. I hate meaningless sports, right? Yeah. So yeah, can't wait for the season to start. Give me some real trackable games. Let's get into this. It's nice that it's back though.
Yes. Next week we might be able to touch on a little bit of actual basketball. When we're recording, it will be the same day that the season opens. So we might get a little bit of that East Coast game in before we start potting. But that'll do it for this episode of the NBA Hangout. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. You can follow me at BJAY93_. You can follow the podcast at the NBA Hangout on Twitter /X. You can follow Dave here every week. Like and subscribe, rate and review, all that fun stuff on all the stuff. We're on YouTube now. We're on YouTube. We do video. If you've just been an audio person, there is a YouTube. You can find that on the Playbook Sports YouTube page. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. Peace.